Today, we uncover the 8 worst tomato ketchups. You can walk into any Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Aldi, Lidl, Co-op, or corner shop and still buy right now in 2026. The bright red bottles we squeeze over our children's chips every single night, the ones we were told for 50 years. We're just tomatoes with a bit of sugar and vinegar, the ones that quietly replaced proper homemade sauce while we were too busy working 2 jobs and trusting the labels on the shelves. For decades, they convinced us that fat was the enemy, that butter and dripping and lard would clog our arteries and kill us stone dead, while they pumped sugar into absolutely everything else and told us it was perfectly safe. They told us a proper fry-up with bacon, sausages and eggs was dangerous, but drowning chips, beans on toast or a plate of nuggets in half a bottle of ketchup every night was absolutely fine because it was low-fat. Fast forward to today, and 1 in 3 10-year-olds is overweight or obese. Type 2 diabetes is being diagnosed in primary school children. Tooth decay is the #1 reason kids end up in hospital. And the very condiment we've been slathering on everything for 3 generations now has ingredient lists that read more like a chemistry experiment than something that started life as a tomato. Here's the part they don't want you to remember. Real ketchup used to be 5 or 6 ingredients your gran could list without even looking at the jar: tomatoes, vinegar, sugar, salt, onion powder, maybe a clove or 2. What sits on our shelves in 2026 is ultra-refined, artificially sweetened, chemically thickened, stabilized, colored, and so far removed from actual food that calling it ketchup is starting to feel like an insult to every British dinner table that ever had a red squeezy bottle on it. So today, we pull back the curtain together because the bottle in your cupboard right now might be one of the quietest contributors to the health crisis we're all living through and paying for with our children's future. It all began in the late 1970s when the low-fat crusade took over Britain like a religion. The government, the British Heart Foundation, the doctors on the telly, the school dinner ladies, they all repeated the same gospel: saturated fat clogs, your arteries, cut the fat out, pile on the carbohydrates, and everything will be fine. The food industry saw pound signs flashing in front of their eyes. Remove the fat, pump in sugar and salt, keep the taste addictive, slap a healthy-looking label on it, and sell it as the responsible choice for modern British families. Heinz ran massive television campaigns in the 80s and 90s, showing smiling children pouring rivers of red sauce over chips with the slogan, "It has to be Heinz," while quietly increasing the sugar content year after year after year. Schools served it by the gallon because it was low-fat. Hospitals put it on every single tray because it ticked the healthy eating boxes. Chip shops had it in industrial-sized buckets because it was cheap and the punters loved the taste, and we all believed them because the front of the bottle said, "Made with real tomatoes," in big friendly letters, and nobody had time to turn it over and read the rest. By the early 2000s, the average British child was getting over 70 grams of added sugar a day, and ketchup was one of the top 5 sources. They knew by the mid-1990s that excessive fructose caused non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in children. They had the studies, they had the internal memos, they had the whistleblowers, but they kept the recipe sweet and the marketing louder because profit margins were more important than our kids' pancreases. We trusted them with our children's dinners, and they replaced real food with factory sauce. So today we uncover the 8 worst tomato ketchups you can still buy in every single supermarket in Britain in 2026, not because they're hidden away in some dark corner, but because they're front and center in every aisle, in every trolley, in every cafe, every packed lunch, every chip shop. Squeezy bottle from Land's End to John O'Groats, and most of us have absolutely no idea what they're actually doing to our families every single night. Number 8 is the one that's been part of British life since 1876, the one that feels like it's woven into the fabric of the nation itself: Heinz tomato ketchup. It's in every cafe, every fridge, every picnic basket, every school dinner hall, every football stadium condiment station. The bottle is iconic red. The adverts are pure nostalgia, and for most of us, it's the taste of childhood itself. They still plaster the front with no artificial colors, No artificial flavors, no thickeners, no preservatives, and some bottles even carry the laughable one of your 5-a-day sticker that trading standards somehow still allows. But turn the bottle over in 2026, and this is what we're actually squeezing onto our children's dinner: tomato concentrate from 165 g of tomatoes per 100 g of ketchup, spirit, vinegar, sugar, coming in at a whopping 23 to 24 g per 100 g. Depending on the batch, salt, spice, and herb extracts containing celery sweetener, sucralose thickener, xanthan gum acidity regulator, citric acid preservative, potassium sorbate. That's right, the so-called classic recipe now contains an artificial sweetener and a thickener that didn't exist when most of us were kids. They quietly changed the recipe between 2019 and 2021, increasing the sugar slightly and slipping sucralose in to cut costs, while keeping the sweetness exactly the same, so we wouldn't notice. The one ingredient that has absolutely no business being in something called tomato ketchup is sucralose, a chlorinated artificial sweetener, 600 times sweeter than sugar, that was never part of the original 1876 recipe. What it does inside our children's bodies is devastating. The fructose hits the liver like a sledgehammer, while the sucralose tricks the brain into craving even more sweetness, training kids to need hypersweet foods for the rest of their lives and setting them up for metabolic chaos before they even reach secondary school. Real parents on Mumsnet this year are writing, "My 8-year-old won't eat a single vegetable unless it's swimming in Heinz. I'm terrified for his future." Another wrote, "I tasted the new recipes side by side with a bottle from 2015 and it's completely different, sickly sweet and somehow thing." At the same time, which magazine blind tested batches in 2024 and found some labeled classic actually contained 28 g of sugar per 100 g. They knew as early as 2018 that artificial sweeteners confuse children's metabolism and increase future obesity risk. There were peer-reviewed studies from all over the world, but they rolled it out anyway because it saved them a fraction of a penny per bottle, and we kept buying, because the label still said Heinz. Number 7 is the bottle millions of us throw into the trolley every single week because it's only 75 pence for 700 grams Tesco own brand tomato ketchup. It's the one we buy when money's tight. The one the kids don't notice any difference with the one that sits on the table in student flats, single-parent homes, and pensioners' kitchens alike. The front of the bottle still screams "made with real tomatoes," with a massive picture of ripe red ones bursting with juice, and underneath in tiny writing, "suitable for vegans," as if that somehow makes it healthy. Turn it over in 2026, and this is what we're actually giving our families: water listed as the very first ingredient, tomato puree, only 72% glucose-fructose, syrup, sugar, spirit, vinegar, modified maize starch, salt, acidity regulator, citric acid preservative, potassium sorbate, and flavoring. Notice anything missing tomatoes are no longer the main ingredient, water is. They switched from ordinary sugar to cheaper glucose-fructose syrup back in 2021 and increased the modified maize starch to keep it thick without using more expensive tomato solids. The one ingredient that has no business being there is modified maize starch E1442, a chemically altered thickener that keeps the sauce gloopy while they water it down. Glucose-fructose syrup is actually worse than table sugar because it bypasses normal insulin response and goes straight to the liver, building fat there even faster and contributing to the childhood fatty liver epidemic we're seeing right now. Parents on Reddit's r/uckfrugal this year are writing, "Tesco ketchup used to taste decent 10 years ago now. It's like red syrup with a chemical aftertaste that lingers." Another said, "My daughter has tummy aches every single time we have chips now, and I'm 100% certain it's the new." Source: in 2023, the Food Standards Agency quietly found undeclared sulfites in a random batch. No massive recall, just a note buried on page 4 of their website, so most of us never saw it. They knew glucose-fructose syrup caused fatty liver in children from American studies years earlier, but it's cheaper than sugar, so they made the switch anyway and hoped we wouldn't notice the difference. Number 6 is the one that pretends to be a step up from the rest, the premium bottle we buy when we think we're treating the family Hellmann's tomato ketchup, £2.20 a bottle in most supermarkets. They market it hard as the real tomato taste for people who believe they're buying something a cut above the basics. The front screams made with sustainably sourced tomatoes in big green letters and 30% less sugar than the market leader in an even bigger banner, so we feel responsible. Putting it in the trolley. Turn the bottle over in 2026. And this is what we actually get: tomatoes at 72% sugar, vinegar, salt, lemon juice, concentrate, natural flavoring, antioxidant, ascorbic acid, and the clever little trick, sweetener, stevia. They changed the recipe in 2022, slipped in the stevia so they could slap the 30% less sugar claim on the front while keeping the sweetness exactly the same as before, because stevia is hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, and they only need a pinhead amount to do the job. The one ingredient that has absolutely no business being in something that calls itself ketchup is steviol glycosides, an intense sweetener that never existed in any British kitchen until 5 minutes ago. What it does is confuse our children's taste buds completely. The brain registers an explosion of sweetness without the calories that normally come with it, so the body keeps demanding more and more sugar to match the signal. It's been tricked into expecting setting kids up for sugar addiction before they even understand what's happening. Trustpilot reviews this year are full of parents writing Hellmann's new recipe tastes oddly artificial and leaves a weird metallic aftertaste that wasn't there before. Another said my kids liked it for the first week, but now complain it's too sweet and they feel sick afterwards, viewer footage sent. In last month showed garden birds pecking at chips covered in the new Hellmann's and immediately walking away. They literally won't touch it even when they're starving. They knew by 2018 that intense sweeteners disrupt the gut microbiome and increase future sugar cravings in children. The studies were there in black and white. But the marketing department loved the less sugar claim, so they rolled it out nationwide anyway and watched the sales climb. Number 5 is the one that breaks our hearts more than any other, because it's the bottle the poorest families rely on every single day. Asda Smart Price Tomato Ketchup, 39p for 460 grams. It's bright red, it's dirt cheap, it's what people buy when universal credit barely stretches to the end of the month. The front just says tomato ketchup in big letters and suitable for vegetarians in tiny ones, as if that somehow makes it nutritious. Flip it over and we're looking at water listed as the very first ingredient, then tomato paste at a pathetic 20% glucose-fructose syrup, modified maize starch acidity, regulator acetic acid, salt, preservative, potassium sorbate sweetener, sodium saccharin, flavoring color E150D. They changed it in 2020, cut the tomato content from 25% to 20% added water and the artificial sweetener saccharin to keep the sweetness while slashing production costs to the bone. The one ingredient that should never ever be in food aimed at children is sodium saccharin, an artificial sweetener that's been controversial for decades and is actually banned in children's products in several countries because of long-term bladder cancer links in animal studies. Parents on Mumsnet this year are writing my toddler screams blue murder if there's no red sauce on his plate. I feel trapped buying the cheapest one, but I know it's awful for him. Another said Asda Smart Price used to be bearable 5 years ago. Now it tastes like sweet red water with a chemical burn. At the end, they knew saccharin was dodgy decades ago, but it's dirt cheap and the families who buy Smart Price don't have the luxury of choice, so they kept it in there and kept the price low enough that we'd keep coming back. Number 4 carries proper British nostalgia on its shoulders: Branston tomato ketchup, the one from the same people who make the pickle we all slap on cheese and crackers. They sell it with Union Jack branding and Great British Taste written large across the front, as if it's been made in a village kitchen since the war. Turn it over and we get tomatoes, sugar, spirit, vinegar, modified maize, starch, salt, spice, blend, herb blend, garlic powder. Sounds almost decent until you realize the tomato content is only about 58% and the sugar is still 22 grams per 100 grams. They quietly increased the modified maize starch in 2023 to save money while keeping the thickness we expect from the brand. The one ingredient that shouldn't be there is still the high fructose load hidden behind British branding and nostalgia marketing. Which magazine ran a blind taste test in 2024 and ranked Branston dead last for actual tomato flavor tasters, said it tasted more like sweet vinegar than tomatoes. They knew consumers wanted British and traditional, so they kept the packaging looking like it fell off a 1970s advert while stripping the recipe down to the bare minimum inside. Number 3 is the one that looks identical to Heinz from 10 feet away, Morrison's Savours Tomato Ketchup, 45p a bottle. Water-first tomato paste, only 18% glucose-fructose syrup, modified starch, acetic acid, salt preservative, sweetener, aspartame flavoring. They changed it in 2022, water became the main ingredient, tomato content was halved, aspartame added to keep the sweetness while cutting costs again. The one ingredient that has no place near children is aspartame, possible links to headaches, hyperactivity, and long-term neurological concerns that have been debated for 40 years. Reddit threads this year are full of parents saying Morrison's red sauce now tastes like chemicals mixed with water. My kids still drown everything in it because it's the only one we can afford. Number 2 is the one that keeps winning best value awards, Aldi Bramwell's tomato ketchup, 69p. And flying off the shelves because it claims to be just like the leading brand. Tomato concentrate, 70% sugar, 24 grams vinegar, salt, onion powder, spice extracts containing celery sweetener, sucralose. They changed it in 2024, slipped sucralose in to cut costs while keeping sweetness the same. In spring 2025, Aldi had to recall several batches for possible glass fragments. The FSA put out an alert, but it was buried on page 4 of their website, so most of us never saw it. They knew and kept selling anyway. Number 1, the absolute worst tomato ketchup you can still buy in Britain in 2026 is the one that hides in plain sight on every single shelf and pretends to be harmless little snake-tastic tomato ketchup, 49p for a massive 550g bottle. It's the one that undercuts everyone. The one that looks identical to Heinz from a distance, the one that struggling families buy 2 or 3 at a time because it's half the price of the proper stuff. The front of the bottle just says tomato ketchup in huge letters and has a picture of a smiling cartoon tomato, nothing else. No health claims, no nostalgia, just pure budget temptation. Turn it over and this is what we're actually pouring over our children's dinner every single night. Water listed first, then tomato paste at an insulting 15% glucose-fructose syrup, modified maize starch, spirit, vinegar, acetate, regulator, acid, salt preservative, potassium sorbate. Sweeteners, sucralose and acesulfame-K mixed together for double intensity flavoring, color, E150D stabilizer, xanthan gum. They changed the recipe in late 2023, dropped the tomato content from an already pathetic 20% down to 15%, added water and 2 artificial sweeteners to keep the sweetness screaming while slashing production costs even further. The one ingredient that should never be anywhere near children is the combination of sucralose and acesulfame-K, 2 intense artificial sweeteners that hit the brain like a sledgehammer and train kids to need hypersweet foods before they've even started school. Parents on Reddit this year are writing Lidl ketchup. Used to be bearable, now it's like drinking red syrup with a chemical burn at the end. Another said, my 5-year-old has tantrums. If there's no red sauce and I feel sick every time I squeeze this stuff out. In January 2025, the FSA issued a low-key alert for possible plastic fragments in certain batches. No major recall, just a quiet note most of us never saw. They knew combining 2 intense sweeteners confuses children's metabolism and gut bacteria. They had the research, but it's the cheapest possible way to keep the sweetness level we're all addicted to, so they did it anyway and kept the price under 50p, so we'd keep buying it by the armful. Every single year, the tomato percentage shrinks, the sweetener list grows longer, the water content goes up, and the price somehow stays the same or drops another penny. They're not making ketchup better. They're making it cheaper to produce while keeping us hooked on the taste we remember from childhood when it actually contained tomatoes. This isn't going to magically improve on its own. If anything, it's only going to get worse unless we start paying attention right now. Here's what we now teach our own kids the second they're old enough to read a label: 7 simple rules you can screenshot right now if you're standing in the supermarket aisle watching this. Rule 1, if water is the first ingredient, it's red-colored water, not ketchup. Rule 2, if sugar or syrup is over 20 grams per 100 grams, it's dessert sauce, not dinner sauce. Rule 3, if it contains sucralose, aspartame, saccharin, acesulfame-K, or stevia, put it straight back on the shelf. Rule 4, real ketchup has 5 or 6 ingredients. Maximum anything longer is a chemistry set. Rule 5, the fridge test: proper ketchup sets firm when cold factory sauce stays runny because it's stabilized to live on a shelf for years. Rule 6, tomato content under 60% means it's mostly filler and water. Rule 7, you can make real ketchup at home in 20 minutes for 40 pence with tinned tomatoes, vinegar, a bit of sugar, salt and spices. Screenshot this now and try it this weekend. We're not doctors or dietitians. This video is education and opinion only based on publicly available data and peer-reviewed studies. Always do your own research and consult a healthcare professional if you have concerns. They kept the red bottle, the nostalgic label, the squeezy top, the low price, but they removed the tomatoes and added the laboratory. We still have a choice. One flip of the bottle at a time, we take our kitchens back. Poll right now on screen, which of these 8 are you pouring down the sink tonight? If you're done being lied to, hit subscribe. New expos every Tuesday and Friday. Comment the ketchup that shocked you most. I read every single one. Share this with one parent who still thinks ketchup is just tomatoes and sugar. Turn on the bell, they don't want these videos in your feed. See you in the next aisle, mate.